So on the day that this girl is supposed to leave and the guy's like, you need to get in my car, obviously there is no other form of transportation on that island, that there are no cabs, and she's fully aware of this, but for whatever reason now, in the state of mind that she's in, she fully believes that there are cabs and that he is lying to her to try and get her into his car so that he can take her to become like a human sacrifice. I would assume at this point he is very worried about like what this girl is going to say that he's done to her, etc. And so he calls his uncle, and his uncle comes, and they end up having to get like, I don't know if it's like police or like security that they have on the island. They have to end up getting her out, and that's when they take her to the nearest hospital. Her family back home, who have no idea that she is in Scotland on this little island, get a phone call to say that their daughter is in some sort of episode. She has no history of mental illness, and so they run every sort of test, but she doesn't have a temperature, she has no infection, and so they really have no idea what has happened, but they know that it's probably linked to these migraines, which she has never suffered with before. Before she arrived at this house, this like really, really old house, and by the way, I did reread the email and I realised that it doesn't say that it was 500 years old, so I don't actually know where I got that from. I think I just made that part up, sorry about that. Unbeknownst to her, this house that she was arriving at had some questionable past, like in the recent history of it. There have been several people that just walked out, didn't want to work on it. It's not like a modern day house where you would have like a hallway and then rooms coming off of a hallway. To get to certain rooms, you had to walk through other rooms. It was like a higgledy-piggledy kind of layout. So he decides, the guy doing work on it, that he's going to start at the back room so that he doesn't have to traipse like workers' dirt in and out of the house as each room is finished. He starts work on that back room, furthest point from the front door that you can get to. It has a tiny window that a child couldn't fit out, which again is important. It becomes the master bedroom. That's going to become the room where the couple stay, where most of like the weird stuff happens. And when he first starts work on that house, he experiences several worrying things that make him doubt his own sanity. For instance, he experiences losing his tools. Like he would wake up and tools that he knows that he had out for the next day would be gone. He couldn't find them anywhere, and it starts to make him think that maybe somebody from the island was coming in and taking certain tools, and he actually blames another guy that lives on the island and was like born and raised there, and his uncle was basically like, no, he would never do that. The other thing that he experiences is like very scary dreams about certain worship, pretty much everything that I mentioned in the first video. He has dreams of like being outside naked, but when he would wake up in the morning, his feet were like clean, so he didn't think that it had actually happened. But the dreams were very vivid, and he would also have like certain marks on his body that he couldn't remember how they had happened. Certain jobs that he had in his mind to complete the next day, like say for instance laying a certain bit of floor, cutting a certain bit of wood, he would wake up and that job would be done, but it would be done to such a bad standard that it was like wasting materials, and he just couldn't work out who would be doing it. And this is when he starts to question like maybe the house is haunted. And he starts to question if maybe he is having some sort of mental breakdown. He's spending a lot of hours on his own in a house, he's not having human interaction, and he starts to question if maybe that's what's happening. And he reads online that sometimes if you are in some sort of episode, your pupils can dilate, and so he starts to take pictures of his eyes close up. But again, when he wakes up in the morning, he doesn't remember taking these certain pictures, doesn't remember like certain Google searches that he made, but he would wake up and he would see them on his iPad. When he finishes work on that particular room and he starts to move his way through the house towards the front door, those issues, those symptoms that he's been having, they get less and less. And so he starts to write it down to maybe that was his first few weeks, and he's slowly adjusting to this new way of life. And I guess at some point this girl gets back in contact with him, and he decides that actually I feel quite lonely, I'd quite like to see her again, and he invites her over. This is where things start to go downhill. So there is one room in the whole of the house that is finished to a higher standard than the others, that it's going to be the most livable, the most comfortable for having a lady stay, and that is the bedroom at the far side, because remember that was the bedroom that he had started on. Up until this point, he has been staying in the first room of the house. So as you came in the door, essentially it's the living room. Obviously, where he's going to be having her stay, he decides to utilise that bedroom, the one that's most finished. So when she arrives, they put all of their stuff in that room, and the first few days are absolutely fine. However, one of the nights, he feels like he can hear somebody walking through the house. And in his mind, he doesn't want to look like he is worried about an intruder or this strange guy that he had assumed had been taking his tools and finishing these jobs to like bad standards. He's assuming that he's back, and he doesn't want to look scared or worried or anything like that. He's trying to impress this girl, and so he starts to lock the bedroom door, which he had never done before. And remember, there is one small window in that room. So essentially, with there being a gas leak, they are stopping any ventilation from coming in and out of that room. A few nights into her stay, so a few nights after having these doors closed, she wakes up in a panic and she starts to question where she is. She doesn't know who he is, and she starts to become aggressive. And he is completely petrified, doesn't understand this behaviour, doesn't know if she has any history of mental illness, doesn't even know if she's sleepwalking. He's just very, very confused. Anyway, she jumps up and says that she's being held prisoner, that she wants to leave, and he's like, okay, you can leave. He's scared. He doesn't even have his phone in the room with him to like record what's happening so that he can prove that he didn't do anything to her. And she goes to the door and she tries to get out, but the door is locked. She cannot open it, and so he tries to help her, and at this point she starts hitting him from behind and she even bites him. So that is where the bite mark came from. And then, casual as anything, she seems to snap out of it and goes and gets back in bed and falls back to sleep. At this point, he is still petrified. He can't believe what has just happened. He can't believe that she's just gone back to bed as if nothing's happened. And so he's still trying to get the door open, and it is jammed. He opens a window and tries to get out of the window, but remember, the window is tiny. Like, in his right mind, he would know that he couldn't fit out of that window, but that just goes to show that he was not in his right mind. Like, this was also affecting him. And this is where, in her story, she thinks that he's sleepwalking and she puts him back in bed. And then the next morning, she questions him on the bruises on his back, and he can't work out if she genuinely can't remember or if this girl is a little bit mentally unstable and knows what she's done and is now trying to make a joke out of the fact that she's bit him. Point, he just wants to put the entire thing to bed. Like, he wants this girl to leave, but he doesn't want to make her angry because now he's questioning, like, if she is she all there. So when he says that he's going out to do a job and she says that she doesn't want to come, he feels relieved and he tells his uncle what's gone on. And then he comes home and she seems very unwell, like vomiting, headache, looks pretty bad, in pretty bad shape. And he starts to wonder if maybe this episode is linked to some sort of virus, and he tries to get her to a doctor. She will not go, and because of everything that's already gone on, he doesn't want to touch her, he doesn't want to pick her up, anything like that. And he makes sure that he tells his uncle, and he also records certain incidents as like evidence. And then that brings us to the last day, where she has like a complete meltdown and they end up having to physically get her out of the house and they take her to the hospital. He then opens up to his uncle about how he thinks that the house might have something to do with it and how he thinks that the house is haunted. And at that point, his uncle starts to put two and two together. That is when they realise that the levels in the house are ridiculously high, and if the two had stayed there for another night with the door shut, it could have ended in a serious tragedy. At which point, I guess that he lets her know. Also, really quick disclaimer, I have only spoken to the girl in this story. I don't know the guy. I have never spoken to him. So although I've just told you everything from his perspective, I don't know him. If this is your story, I hope I got everything correct. If I didn't, you can DM me.